Luz Garmazo coming to you live here at my daughter's house in Modesto, California, live on the scene at
The
Jasmine Scarmazzo's
209.
apartment. So yeah, this is a pretty dopey like full circle moment for me right here. When I went away, she was like in kindergarten, so now I'm at her house, doing the news. So that's pretty dope to me. Anyway, shout out Jasmine, love you, baby girl. Anyhow, DEA likely to okay marijuana rescheduling, but election and lawsuits could get in the way. This is from MJ Biz yesterday by Chris Roberts. From zealous drug war to out of touch elder statesman, the regulated marijuana industry's savior apparent, President Joe Biden's long arc in the public life has been more twists of head. 1 year after setting in motion the most significant transformation in federal marijuana policy since the 1970s, I kind of take a little dispute with that statement, but we'll continue. The same politician whose views as a U.S. Senator escalated the drug war at its apex has now, as president, laid the cornerstone for a stable and lasting legal marijuana industry. That whole paragraph might have been written by a Biden speechwriter. I'm not sure. Love him or hate him, said Andrew Klein, Denver based senior counsel at the national firm for Perkins Coie. This industry should show him some appreciation. Again, I'm going to do a wait and see on that. How it started. Drug reformers had low hopes for Biden in the White House. A law and order hardliner as senator, Biden was routinely ridiculed in the 2020 campaign trail for refusing to adapt to the changing attitudes of drug use. By his October 2022 declaration that half a century of federal marijuana prohibition was a failed approach is his most pro forma statement as a sitting president. Biden's accompanying executive order for the federal health regulators to expeditiously reevaluate the way the country regulates marijuana accumulated with an August 29th recommendation from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the HHS, that the drug be reclassified as a Schedule III controlled substance. The recommendation is the federal government's first admission that marijuana has medicinal value. Legal experts say that the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency has no choice but to codify the recommendation, which would immediately relieve cannabis operators from their Section 280E of the IRS code. Section 280E prohibits plant-touching businesses from taking normal business deductions on their federal tax returns. Given that the recommendation appears less than a year after the review process has launched, it's a clear indicator that the White House is taking drug policy reform seriously. A second Biden term, if it materializes, might trend interstate marijuana commerce, and federal legalization, observers say. How it's going. As of mid-October, the DEA was evaluating the recommendation and the final steps before the agency issues a proposed change to federal law. But even that now seems like a formality. The DEA has yet to contradict health regulators' recommendations on matters of health, science, and health, and might lack the authority to do so, according to an analysis from the Congressional Research Service think tank. That means that the DEA is likely to sign off on the HHS recommendation and issue a proposed rule change, possibly as early as the end of the year, predicting Howard Slamberg, a former top enforcement official for the Food and Drug Administration, who is now partner at a Washington, D.C. law firm, Arnold and Porter. I don't think that it will take terribly long, Slamberg said, who also correctly predicted that the HHS recommendation would come more quickly than many had anticipated. They're wanting to get this thing done. They'll have the rule done certainly by 2024 and probably not too late into 2024 given the political cycle, he added. That means that Biden, chief sponsor and lead agitator for the notorious 1994 crime bill and the 1988 anti-drug abuse bill, which increased my mandatory minimum, that filled the nation's prisons with nonviolent drug offenders, could run for re-election with doing more than any other president to legalize marijuana on his resume, which could be a key factor in the cannabis-friendly swing states such as Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Biden was not a friend of cannabis, said Aaron Miles, chief investment officer of Chicago-based marijuana multi-state operator Verano Holdings Corp. At one point recently, he was calling this a gateway drug. For this administration to embrace this as a medicine is just massive, massive, end quote. What's next? While drugs have been rescheduled and even descheduled in the past, the most relevant example being Epidiolex, the hemp-derived CBD-rich epilepsy treatment that the DEA classified as a Schedule 5 drug in 2018 before removing it from the Controlled Substance Acts entirely in 2020, experts agree that there is little precedent for rescheduling marijuana that would give a clear picture of what to follow. It's totally fair to say that this is unprecedented. Jonathan Calkins, a drug policy researcher professor at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. This is a botanical number one, said Klein of Perkins Cole. And number two, there's never been a nationwide marketplace for a drug that has been approved by the FDA like this. Those things are true. Still, there are generally agreed upon process that rescheduling recommendation will follow from there, policy experts say. After that, the DEA weighs rescheduling matters of policy, including U.S. obligations under treaties, what will trigger the federal lawmaking process laid out by the Administration Procedures Act. The DEA publishes the rule. The rule opens for 30 to 60 days for public comment. The rule might be issued by the end of the year, meaning that rescheduling could take effect as soon as spring. What the DEA cannot do is contradict the rescheduling recommendation. The DEA has to accept the medical and scientific evaluation, Klein said. That is statutory. Observers agree that almost certainly could be lawsuits, both by the legalization foes seeking to keep marijuana strictly legal and by legalization advocates seeking to deschedule the drug entirely. Either way, both scenarios could lead to a judge imposing injunctions and halting rescheduling process before the legal complaint is resolved. So what's still to happen here? Yet, as critics and skeptics point out, rescheduling is not legalization. Downgrading cannabis from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 of the CSA, which permits doctors and DEA licensed pharmacies to provide FDA-approved drugs such as anabolic steroids, ketamine, and Tylenol with codeine, might raise more questions than answers for the industry that largely operates independently of physicians and mainstream pharmacies. It may be a halfway victory for the industry if suddenly federal authorities insist that doctors must prescribe marijuana like other drugs, said Joshua Horn of the Philadelphia headquartered law firm Fox Rothschild. Another complication would be the new resident in the White House. If it's possible that if Biden, whose approval rating stood around 42 in August, according to research from firm Gallup, and who is neck and neck with former President Donald Trump, is most presidential polling, could lose this election. And then it talks about like if Trump comes on, that it could change. Rescheduling rather than descheduling also has led to some voices in the cannabis industry claiming that the process is a Trojan horse meant to gift marijuana to big pharmacy interests. Experts interviewed by MJ Biz magazine agreed that such talk is conspiracy-level misinformation that's not grounded in facts or practical reality. It's crazy town for a whole variety of reasons, Perkins client said. What pharmaceutical company is going to spend billions on clinical trials or pre-market review of a drug that's already being used by millions of people? There's no pharmaceutical company that invests like that. The FDA does not have the bandwidth or the resources or the wherewithal or the expertise to regulate this product, he added. They said that they can't even regulate CBD. So what are they going to do? Stop inspecting meat so they can start cracking down on cannabis? Telling these concerns, while led to some law, are squarely on the fringe. And then it talks about like how we need to get safe banking to pass, and this will help do that. And I think that the realization that the administration and Congress is never going to get this done, I think that's part of what we got going on here, why the president is pushing it. Rescheduling would have an important symbolic effect, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes where, moving it down to Schedule 3 means that the statement is no longer there of saying that it doesn't have any efficacy. And where I advocate in a state to legalize cannabis laws that would make it politically safer for me when talking to state legislators and when talking to sheriffs. The fact is, changing cannabis laws is incredibly complicated, and it was never going to be done in a snap of a finger. There are steps, and this is a big one, Scamberg added. Okay, that was a long one. Sorry about that. So let me begin by saying my commentary by saying cannabis should be descheduled completely. Now, that said, I do view Schedule 3 as progress, and I agree that it gives us, our position as advocates, more credibility with the opposition, and that That's whose minds that we have to actually enlighten and engage with. However, I'm not 100% sold on the fact that the DEA is going to go right along with this, because there's no precedent in this. Yes, sure, most of the time they would accept science and fact, but there's no precedent for this particular thing to happen. And the DEA has already ignored their own administrative law judge, Francis L. Young, when he recommended that cannabis be rescheduled to the agency. So I'm hopeful, but I'm cautious. But let's further break down what Chris Roberts said here. He says, and accurately in my opinion, that no one knows exactly what this will look like if cannabis goes to Schedule 3, because it's never happened before. There's never been a robust nationwide market for a Schedule 3 substance that's yet to be approved. Cannabis still remains federally illegal, just like it was when it was a Schedule 1 narcotic, right? So you can still go to prison. If you get caught on the street with a Schedule 3, whether it be something you obtained from a pharmacy or it be cannabis, and you're selling it on the street, you will go to prison. So it removes the ridiculous 280E, which I think is dope. It'll be a boon for the industry, especially at retail. So I welcome it if the DEA signs off on this recommendation, but we still need to keep fighting to completely deschedule and make sure that no one is in prison for this plan, because that's really the things that are important here. This is Luke Scarmazzo, your neighborhood outlaw correspondent, reporting live at the High at 9 News and sending us back to our Los Angeles studios and my esteemed colleagues. What are your thoughts on this really interesting piece of news?
I think this is a sham.
Well,
It's a sham. It's a sham, and shame on the DEA for supporting moving cannabis to Schedule 3.
Travesty, mockery,
and this attorney guy that is saying how this moving it to Schedule 3 isn't just throwing it into the hands of Big Pharma, I feel like is just getting paid off by Project Sam, in my opinion, because that's exactly what it would do, because we have the Food, Drugs, and Cosmetics Act, and saying that the federal government wouldn't regulate it because of CBD already doesn't make sense, because they already have drug preclusion on CBD with Epidiolex and drug preclusion on THC with Marinol. So how does that all play out?
You know, it makes a lot more sense that your boy Vivek Ramaswamy voted against legalization last night, you know, because he is all about that big pharma.
I mean, stop it.
I trust the courts more than I trust the DEA. I don't trust the DEA at all, because they have an administrative runaround that you cannot get out of. And this guy's saying that it's not going to bring Big Pharma in. I don't know what percentage of the people currently licensed to be involved in cannabis are going to survive, but I don't think it's going to be a large percentage, because the DEA is going to make you jump through so many hoops to be able to manufacture cannabis and then move it around and sell it. I want the courts to step in and go, no, it can't be a Schedule 1, remove it, and then send it back to Congress and make them do something about this. Right now, that's a false choice, and the consequences are going to be disastrous. Every social equity person in this country is going to eat shit if this goes to Schedule 3.
That's very true.
I disagree. I disagree in the sense of, with both you guys respectfully, in the sense that it doesn't change anything. Like tomorrow, if the federal government says, hey guys, only pharmacies can dispense cannabis, but our state laws don't change and none of the other state laws change, it doesn't change anything. Your dispensary is illegal today. It's illegal tomorrow if it's Schedule 3. It doesn't change any of what our industry, how it's regulated. Like, if the federal government has been telling us what to do with cannabis and we haven't listened to them. We've only done stuff as we do as a state. We listen to our state, and we're a sovereign state. So the whole thing about, oh well, if Schedule 3 happens, the pharmaceutical companies are going to automatically take over. Listen, the pharmaceutical companies are waiting on the wings to take over no matter what, and they are going to come in, but that doesn't change anything as well either. Like, the MSOs are still as big as some of these, I mean, not money wise, but large, like a pharmaceutical company, and in those senses, like, what a pharmaceutical company is going to do, a bigger greenhouse or more cannabis, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, those things are already here. Now they're going to look bigger, of course, when we have those big players come in, the alcohol industry, tobacco industry, pharmaceutical company, they're coming. Trust me, they're licking their chops on the sideline. But what I'm saying is the Schedule 3 thing does not change does not change our dynamic as a California state dispensary or a licensed cultivator at all. you are still federally illegal. Until it's descheduled, you will remain federally illegal and you will be able to go to prison. I want to stress this to people. You're like, we are getting lost in the weeds on this about saying like, hey, what will happen if this schedule, what will the feds will let us do, and who will okay, what store will be licensed? Like, man, come on, none of that matters. None of it matters now, and so why would we automatically start listening to them then?
I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. Because the reason why it doesn't matter is because we have Rohrabacher Farr in place, which is now Blumenauer McClintock. That's why that matters. So that stops the Justice Department from going after state licensed cannabis businesses. Right now, the FDA doesn't have jurisdiction over Schedule I drugs, and that would immediately put them in involvement of having jurisdiction. And so that's why. That's why everything.
But the Rohrabacher Amendment doesn't go away though. So like,
yes, but that's only for the Justice Department. That's not for the FDA. The FDA has its own. The FDA has its own enforcement division. Okay,
sure,
their own.
But what you're missing what the Rohrabacher Amendment says. The Rohrabacher merely says that we will not use DOJ funds to prosecute individuals in state that are following state law. So that amendment would
and
still
you won't be following state law because once it goes to Schedule 3, you're going to have to be a pharmacy, and therefore, by the state's definition, you're not going to be a pharmacy. So you're already breaking the law.
No.
Yeah,
the state still has their cannabis
100%.
law. The state still has their dispensary law, Jason.
No.
Hang on.
No.
Right now, we have not had a ruling that these state laws are in conflict with federal law because they have joint jurisdiction over cannabis right now under the Controlled Substances Act. If they make it Schedule 3 and make it be in a pharmacy, the courts could certainly...
Dale, who has joint jurisdiction?
The feds and the state have joint jurisdiction.
No. The feds absolutely have jurisdiction. They can supersede our state jurisdiction as they did with you and I. So the feds absolutely have jurisdiction in this sense. Now, the state, we are protected as state citizens under the state laws, right? Those don't protect us from the federal laws.
Well, if the Raich decision, and clear back to Wickard versus Filburn, if there is a federal scheme to control marijuana, the states do not get to enter into it. That's how this works. And so far, we've been dancing around that, and in between the lines, California found that federal law does not preempt state law. But if they put it in Schedule 3 and require that everybody have a federal license, a controlled substance license, and to go through a pharmacy, these state laws are now subject to attack for being preempted by federal law.
Exactly. But you would have to go back and change the state law, is my point. As it sits right now.
All the federal court has to do is say they're preempted, and they are all wiped out.
Exactly. But a federal court has to do that, or we would have to go back and change the state law to say now that you would have to follow federal or Schedule 3 federal law. We don't have either one of those situations.
Hold on, Luke.
Right
what are you saying, Dale? What are you saying?
Kevin Sabet would file that suit tomorrow. They're standing by.
Understandable. I'm not saying that people wouldn't file the suit, but what I'm saying is right now, as it stands, if Schedule 3 happens tomorrow, nothing changes for us as an industry in California.
Disagree. I totally disagree with that. I totally disagree.
And you're entitled to.
Yes, I totally disagree with that.
Well, federal courts can issue injunctions, Luke. Okay, and that's the kind of thing we're looking at, to go in and stop all these state laws while they figure this out. I mean, I can just see this coming, and the forces that we're against, they would have an avenue to get into the federal courts and just fuck with this all day long.
I would be really surprised if a federal court issued an injunction to stop the entire industry. That would be a huge injunction.
Fucking federal court in Mississippi would shut this shit down tomorrow.
100% they would.
It would shut it down in Mississippi.
100%. No, it would shut it down once it gets filed in that court.
Appellate level.
Yep.
That would be a Mississippi circuit ruling, though. That wouldn't affect California once again.
Yes, it would. It would affect. No,
it would
everyone.
not, Jason.
Yeah.
Listen, when a judge rules, when a district judge rules at a district level in Mississippi, those laws, now you can use them for supporting factors in your case, but they are not controlling law in the Ninth Circuit.
And this will all be continued. We got to keep this moving.
That's true initially until it gets to an appellate court, and then it runs right to the Supreme Court. And I'll tell you right now, the Supreme Court is going to flush this whole shit down the toilet if they get a chance.
I don't know. We have some conservatives there that may support states' rights, and Clarence Thomas has already kind of leaned that way.
Yeah.
Right,
he based that upon
I love this debate went in overtime.
Uniform policy
you guys duke it out.